A 2021 Debt.com survey showed the pandemic has led more people to rein in their spending. In a survey of more than 1,000 Americans, 80% said that they have a budget. That's up from 68% just 2 years ago. We're talking with Allison Baggerly, founder of the Inspired Budget. She and her husband paid off more than $111,000 in debt on 2 teacher salaries.
When I was able to break down those things that were holding me back, I realized that I could do all of this as 2 teachers. Anyone could do it on 2 teachers' salaries, pay off their debt, build wealth, find contentment, reach their goals. It can be done.
Welcome to the Inspired Money Podcast, where we explore positive money stories. I'm Andy, your host and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Together, let's shift our perspectives on money so we can make more and give more to make a bigger impact in the world. Thank you so much for watching the Inspired Money channel, where we feature interviews and money tips. If you want to do better with your money, hit like right now. Let's get started. We're talking with Allison Baggerly. She's a former teacher turned budgeting expert. Allison is so enthusiastic about budgeting that she actually makes it fun.
Life goes on. Yes, I am hopeful for today. Take this music and use it.
It's never dry, boring, or sleepy time talking about money with Allison. That is a true gift. In this episode, you'll learn how having debt makes many people feel unworthy. Women especially tie debt to their identities. We're going to talk tips for working through this, the connection that spending money can have to emotion, both happy and sad, and effective ways to reducing your monthly expenses. Now let's get inspired with Allison Baggerly. Allison, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Andy. I'm so happy to be here, especially since we're like inspired siblings.
We are. Okay, let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Gosh, I've been thinking about this, and my earliest childhood memory of money, I think, was whenever I thought we didn't have enough money. Money was, I don't know if it was tight, but my view of money, right? It's all about what we view when it comes to our childhood. And my view of money in our house was that there wasn't a lot of it. And I remember going into 6th grade, and my mom couldn't buy me back to school clothes right away. And she had said, you have to wait until like a week after. And I guess that's when she was paid. I don't know. And maybe she didn't want to pull out money out of savings. But in that moment, my view of money was that we didn't have any. And I had one pair of like overalls that fit me. One pair of overalls. So that week I wore them as overalls on one day, and then I wore them as jeans the next day with like my shirt over it. And then I wore them as overalls again because I had gone through a growth spurt and couldn't fit into anything. And I remember getting made fun of. And I went to my mom and I said, people know, I'm having to wear these same things over and over again. She's like, okay, let's go shopping. And she found a way to pay for it. So I don't know if she pulled money out of savings, but that view made me believe that money was tight. And that coupled with just more money issues along the way in my childhood just made me think that money is scarce.
And hopefully you didn't just buy like a second and third pair of overalls.
No, no, I was like, oh, I'm done with overalls. I'm never wearing overalls again. They have tarnished. I just do not want to wear overalls ever again. But it was just, it led me to believe that money is a scarcity and that there's not a lot of it in this world and not enough for me or my family, and that it almost led me to believe that I need to always be stressed about money, that money equals stress.
Do you remember what it felt like putting on the new clothes and going into class?
I don't remember what it felt like. I can only imagine that it felt amazing. But I remember getting made fun of for like the shirts I wore and things like that. And I think part of that was just going into, teenagehood, just being a tween and, people making fun of you for different things. And that wasn't necessarily had to do with money, but I don't remember. But I think that was the first time I can remember feeling stress with money. And feeling like, there's not enough of it.
So I'm so excited to have you on. You mentioned that we're inspired siblings.
Yes.
You have an IG account called Inspired Budget. You have over 100,000 followers. I looked this morning. I think it was 118,000 followers, but who's counting? You're a former teacher turned budget expert and business owner. And truly, I don't know anyone as genuinely passionate about budgeting as you are. Like, you actually get excited.
I do.
And that comes through whenever you're talking about budgeting. Who is your IG account for?
Oh my gosh, it's for women. It's for women who feel stuck, lost, and confused, that they know there is something greater out there for them when it comes to their finances, and they need inspiration. I fully believe that we need to be filtering what we enter into our social media, because that truly affects our mind, it affects our mindset, affects the way what we think about and our thought process. And so I aim to be an inspiration out there in someone's Instagram feed, to pop up, to inspire you, to not shame you about money, to be empathetic, and to just be an encouragement that, hey, you can live on a budget, you can save money, you can build wealth, even on a teacher's salary like we were on. You can do these things, and I'm going to show you the way.
Do you feel like that's a crazy battle? Because you kind of mentioned that social media, one of the problems is that it's always seeing like people's highlight reels. You're seeing their travel. You're seeing their new car. You're seeing their new house. It's like a lot of materialistic stuff, right?
Yes. And I definitely battled that. While my husband and I were paying off debt, I remember seeing that's whenever Instagram actually started, and people weren't using it for business accounts at the time. It was all personal. And I remember seeing my feed was filled with these things I wanted, and all it did was make me want it more. That was it. That's all it did, was made me want this more. And so I had to see how consuming that content, those highlight reels, even those vacations that people probably went into debt to pay for, but I didn't know that at the time. They don't advertise that in their Instagram post. I had to see how that was changing the way I saw my money journey, because my husband and I were on this journey, and it was a tough one. But when I consumed other people's content like that and fell into comparison, I realized it had a direct impact on my goals and the desire to reach my goals, because I somehow no longer cared about them. So my thought is, if I can be this light inside of social media, this encouragement, this help, where I help people, where I truly teach and help, I take my skill set of teaching and I help them, then maybe it can combat some of the other things that are inside their feed.
I'm terrible at Instagram. Like, I post like random photos, and I try not to post too many photos of my kids, even though those tend to get at least a few more likes than anything else that I post. How do you think about content creation? Because this is a business for you, and you are, I think, very strategic. How do you plan out your topics and themes?
So I get a lot of questions. When I do an Ask Me Anything, like sometimes I'll go and I'll do, here, ask me any questions you have about money, about life. And that is, the people are turning to me for advice. So I can use what they send me in that little box on Instagram stories. I can take that and answer those questions, so I can plan out that content. I truly try to think about, what are people struggling with? What questions do they have? And how can I provide a solution or encouragement, right? It comes down to teaching, but also motivation. How can I weave those together? And then also sometimes just entertainment with reels. But that's exactly what I do. I'll sit down and I've not been great at this, to batch at least a week's worth of content, create it, or at least jot down the ideas and create the images. And then I go through with the captions. But honestly, so much of it comes from what people send me, what they're sending me in messages, what people are asking me in my Facebook group, what they're, putting in those little question boxes on Instagram stories. If I'm serving them and giving my audience what they want and what they need, then I'm doing what I need to do.
I just want to tease this really quickly, that Allison does walk her talk because she and her husband on two teacher salaries paid off $111,000 in debt in 4.5 years. So I want to put that out there, come back to that later.
Okay.
Since we were talking about content creation, you had mentioned to me that you had done a series recently that just got a lot of responses. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that was.
So I had started seeing this pattern inside of, like I was saying, like people messaging me, and it was all about women. I cater truly to women and debt and how that makes them feel. And women were sending me messages, paragraphs long, telling me that having debt, whether it's credit card debt, student loan debt, car debt, just consumer debt, made them feel unworthy, made them feel unworthy of love. I had single women message me and tell me, how am I ever going to find someone that will accept me and this baggage? And what I've learned is that women tie debt to their identity, that they feel unloved, unworthy. They feel like bad spouses, like they are failing parents. I had women message me and say, I feel like I'm failing my children, that I will never be able to give them what they deserve because I put myself in this position, and that this makes me a bad mom, and that they just tie it to their identity. And I was shocked. But then again, I'm like, I see it. That's exactly how I felt whenever we were paying off debt. I was ashamed. I was scared to tell anyone. I was embarrassed. And it wasn't until, we had made progress that I was willing to open up to it about a lot of people, because it's something that, you don't want to talk about. It's like revealing your secrets. And that's what I realized. And I came out with this message that debt does not define you as a person, and it does not make you unlovable.
So you get a lot of feedback from women, and it was very common. Like it was a common thread that they shared.
Hundreds of messages. When I went, I did a little thing in my stories where I was sharing some messages I received, and then I was speaking on those messages. And from those stories, hundreds of women messaged me and said, this is exactly how I feel. And then they would dive into, I have credit card debt that I'm hiding from my husband, and I feel like if he finds out, he'll divorce me. I mean, just all of these different stories that all had the common theme of debt makes me unlovable or unworthy. And that debt is tied to my identity. And so many women do it without even realizing it.
In the feedback that you received, any insights into, do men feel much differently?
So I didn't have any men message me, but I was talking about it with my husband, and he said no. He said, I'm able to compartmentalize that. That doesn't make me who I am. So I haven't reached out to men, but men and women are different. They think about things differently. Typically, men compartmentalize a lot better. And I asked my husband, did you ever feel like that while we were paying off debt? Like it defined you? He was like, no, why would that even be a question? And I was shocked. I was like, how is that not a question? How did you not feel that at all? And he just said, because it was just debt. To him, it's just debt. But to some women, it is who they are.
So let's get a little bit into your personal story, because I've heard you talk about that you are a shopper, like you're a spender.
Oh, I love spending money.
And there's an emotional connection
yes.
to the spending, which is kind of related to this topic of feeling ashamed with the debt. It's about feeling and having that connection between emotion and money and spending and debt. So how about a little bit about your background previous to being debt-free?
Okay, so I love spending money. And previously, anytime that I had a strong emotion, I would respond to that emotion by spending money. And I didn't realize this at the time. It took me years of unpacking to figure this out, that whenever I remember when I was in college, like specifically, I remember this really hitting strong in college. And I think it was because I was on my own and I had student loan debt that I thought I could use for anything. I mean, I used student loans to fund a trip to Europe. So I saw student loan debt as just my money, my spending money. And I will never forget whenever my boyfriend, my long-term boyfriend, and I broke up, and I immediately went to the mall and I would shop. And anytime I was sad, I would shop. And then I would get a good grade on a test and I would reward myself by getting a pedicure or shopping. And then, a friendship ended and I would replace that sadness with this temporary high of shopping. So what ended up happening was I developed these habits that anytime I had a strong emotion or sometimes just boredom, just this feeling of uneasiness, I would replace that with shopping because it would give me this temporary excitement. But then ultimately what always ended up happening was I reverted back to that original emotion. And what I know now is that if I had dealt with that original emotion, I would not have turned to shopping and developed this habit that really has stuck with me for so long because that is my go-to. That is my thing. When something exciting happens, I immediately wanted to spend money to celebrate. Just like some people struggle with emotional eating, for me, it was emotional shopping and spending money. And I see the same patterns in different women that I work with.
So is that connected to this feeling ashamed with debt? Like, how do you, if someone feels that way, what's the first step to changing the mindset and getting out of that?
So your first question was, is it connected? And I think absolutely. I think that money is emotional. Money seeps into our lives every day. We all have a money story, just like you ask your podcast guests, and those typically are emotional. And so I think my first step was to realize the pattern. So often we don't even realize. For years, I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was either in denial or completely unaware or too busy worried about paying my bills and didn't have any money that I couldn't see what was causing me to not be able to pay my bills. So it was my habits. It was those harmful habits that were then causing me to have all of these other problems with money, but I couldn't see the connection. So I would say, first and foremost, recognize the connection, recognize the pattern, and then don't beat yourself up about it. Realize that this is a pattern, this is a habit you've had in the past, and that it is harmful, and that we can then take that harmful habit and turn it around into a helpful habit. And how can we take one step closer to that helpful habit? And realizing that it's not going to happen overnight, but if you can do one thing, like when you are upset and the first thing you want to do is go spend money, is to allow yourself to sit in that feeling. And that's what I was avoiding. I was avoiding sitting with my feelings. And feelings aren't bad. It's okay to have bad feelings. I don't think that we should all be happy all the time. That's just impossible. We're humans. But to sit in your feelings and give yourself time to feel your feelings, and don't try to immediately, stuff them down by spending money.
But it had to be kind of nice that everybody at the mall knew you.
I would vary where I would go, but I did have my go-to places. But it was just, honestly, when I did it, immediately I would also have this shame and guilt afterwards, because I knew I was shopping with money that should have been paying for my college. I knew that this was putting myself in a negative position financially, but the fact that it was easing some of these other feelings outweighed the shame and guilt that followed soon after.
Now for you, I heard you talk a little bit about this before, that you were actually tracking your spending, except your goal was different.
Oh yeah. My goal was just to not go negative. I was tracking my spending, but my goal was, how can I make sure I have just a positive number? Not how can I save? How can I do? It was like, how do I make sure I have just enough So I'll just spend everything, but I won't go negative.
You were living like this die broke philosophy, except that you were in college. Like you were very young.
Yeah.
It was a little bit too early to be saying, I'm going to die broke.
Yeah. I was just like, I figured that as long as I wasn't negative, as long as I wasn't getting hit with overdraft fees, then I was doing great. That was like truly my thought process. Like I have $12 in my account and, I get paid in 5 days. This is awesome. I don't have to fill my car up with gas. I have enough money to go to brunch and order an appetizer. Like that was my whole thought process.
There was a point when your mom had to give you guidance.
Yeah.
And tell you, you're being out of control, Allison.
Yeah, she didn't.
Like, what happened there?
So I was in college and I was living off of student loan money, as one like me does with no financial, guidance or anything. And I checked my bank account. I had checked my bank account that morning. This was before we had smartphones and we could pull up the apps or anything like that. And I had like $400 in my account. And I was like, great, $400, we're good to go. I need to go to the grocery store and buy all my ramen noodles and mac and cheese and all the unhealthy things I ate. So later that afternoon, I went to the grocery store, swiped my card, and it was rejected. And I was like, oh, no. This must be an error on your end. Let me swipe it again. I swiped it again. It was denied. And I was like, no, I checked this morning. Like, we're good. You're like, there's something wrong with this machine. Y'all need to get this machine fixed. I'll swipe it again. And it got denied again. I left my groceries there, went home, and realized my rent check had cleared. My rent check had cleared, and it was for $400. So I was $0 in my bank account, and I had to do the thing where I called my mom and said, I need help. And she said, I will help you if you come home this weekend and we get your finances under control. And so I did. I went home, and she printed off my last 2 or 3 months worth of bank statements. We installed Microsoft Money on my computer. And that's when I started tracking my expenses. And that was my first eye-opening experience at how much I was spending and how I was going overboard on eating out and clothing, shopping, and all of these things. I had used up my student loan money. I had used up all my money. And this was in March. So I still had 2 months to go. So that's when I started tracking, and that's when that is when I changed my mindset of, okay, let me spend everything, and I don't care, and I can spend whatever I want, to, okay, now I know how much money I have, let's just not go negative. And if I don't go negative, then I'm being successful.
You figured out a way to survive and limit the amount of trouble you were getting in, it sounds like?
Yeah, like I was still shopping emotionally. I hadn't dealt with the problem. I was just dealing with the symptom of it. I hadn't dealt with the fact that I was overspending because I was not able to deal with my emotions, or I was trying to seek happiness in other ways. I wasn't dealing with that at all. I was totally avoiding that. That didn't come till later. But I was dealing with just getting by, so that way it wasn't a red alarm going off, right? This was just a warning. It was just a warning sign when my account got low. It wasn't this flashing red alarm that I needed to deal with something and there was a deeper issue. That red alarm didn't come until later.
So in a way, like a pretty successful picture in that you graduate from school, you become a teacher, you're working, I don't know the order, but you get married.
Yes.
Like you're kind of supposed to be doing these things. Like
yeah,
I would say that it's normal that people have student debt.
Yes.
And you start working, you're in a job, you enjoy being a teacher.
Right.
But you have a wake-up call to say that I need to look at my budget again.
Exactly. Yeah, because I wasn't budgeting. Before any of that, I graduated college, I am a teacher. I was not budgeting. I was just living and barely making it by every single month. And I'll never forget when my mom said, this was probably like 3 months out of being a teacher, my mom said, I think you need to be saving money. And I was like, what? Like, no, this is silly. She said, no, I think you do. I think it's important for you to have money in savings in case something happens. And I set aside, my emergency fund was $300. I said, okay, well, $300 is enough. I'll have $300 in savings. And if anything else happens, I'll figure it out. I mean, that was my savings, $300. I thought this is plenty. It's $300. And it wasn't until later that I realized that's not enough to have in an emergency fund. I don't know if you know that, but it's really not enough.
At what point do you realize that it's not enough?
So I met my husband. He's also a teacher. He's actually a middle school band director. I met him. We get married. Still, we have never really had a conversation about finances. We did this not the way you're supposed to. We never sat down and talked about money. He paid his bills. I paid my bills. It wasn't a big deal. We got married. And we got pregnant on our honeymoon unexpectedly. I was hoping for another couple of years to go without having children. And that's when we realized we had to combine all of our finances. So in the middle of combining all of our finances, that's when we realized we had combined over $111,000 worth of debt. Between student loans and car loans, it totaled up to $111,108.29. I have it over there on my board. And I was in shock. And then we realized, because we were tracking our money, we were not budgeting, but we were tracking our money, we realized we could not afford daycare payments when this baby came. And that was a complete wake-up call for us.
So what's the first plan of attack? Like, because there are many things. Like, there's tactical, and then there's the mindset. Because you were talking about earlier that you were shopping and it wasn't solving like the root issue.
Mm-hmm. The first plan of attack for us was to figure out how we can free up that $800 a month cash flow. You know, they have different ways to pay off debt. Ours was look at the largest monthly payment, but the smallest overall balance. So we had to look at our debt a little bit differently. We needed to free up $800 within 9 months, essentially. So that was goal number one. Goal number one was to figure out that plan. Then we had to figure out what on earth is a budget. How do we live on one? And when we made our first budget, it was terrible. It was awful. We blew it within 5 days because even though we were tracking our spending, we were not aware of what was realistic for us as a couple when it came to spending money. We were setting crazy high, unrealistic expectations for our spending and our money when we were blowing money left and right before, instead of just spending, 10% less on groceries or 20% less on groceries and eating out. We went down to nothing. And that was probably the worst mistake we could have made, because then it made us feel incompetent.
So don't go cold turkey.
No, don't go cold turkey. I mean, it's just, although it seems you think about it and you're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. Let me do it. Actually living it out is something completely different. And so month one, awful. Month two, we got a little bit better. By month three, we were budgeting, and that's when I started dealing with my spending issues. So our first plan of attack, figure out how we're going to free up this $800, because, there was no way I could stop teaching. We needed my income, and he was a teacher. We had all this debt. Free up the $800, then learn how to budget. Then I needed to deal with my impulse spending or my emotional spending issues so that I didn't wreck the budget every single month.
How hard was that?
It wasn't, it took years. Think about it. I was dealing with this. I had really started attaching spending money with emotions probably when I was about 15 or 16. And so I had to unravel that, 9 years worth of these harmful habits. It wasn't going to be fixed overnight. And so it took time. It took creating boundaries in my life. I had extreme issues walking into Target and Ulta. I could not spend money. So there was a period of time where I physically could not walk into the stores, because if I did, it was like a free for all. It was, I would binge on cosmetics. And so I had to set very clear boundaries for myself and give myself a spending allowance so that way I still felt like I had some sort of control and could spend, but within the boundaries we had set for us to be successful.
So getting back to like creating a realistic budget, is it about just making small steps? Like take a look at where your spending is now and then try just trimming a little bit here and a little bit there first?
I think so. I think it's about looking at your budget and then also looking at, those variable expenses, food is always the biggest budget buster. But I say, look at how you can cut back on those expenses like car insurance, home insurance, cell phone. You can actually get a bigger bang for your buck when you're willing to shop around for those and find cheaper plans, find cheaper monthly costs, bundle them, do whatever you need to do and you can free up hundreds of dollars by just doing that. And that's something that our family does every single January. My husband will look around at our different insurance plans, cell phones, all of that, and ask ourselves, what can we do differently to free up more cash flow? Because once that's done, you've saved that money. And then turn to those variable expenses. And if you normally spend $1,000 at the grocery store each month and you're saying, oh my gosh, we really only need to spend $500, you don't have to go down to $500 right away. You could go to $800 and then $600. You can slowly make these changes as long as you have this room, as long as you're not going further into debt, slowly make these changes that way you can hold on to those changes for a lifetime, not just this season.
In your experience with things like a cell phone or TV subscription, are the companies, are they willing to negotiate or do you have to change providers?
Some are willing to negotiate and some aren't. Back when we had cable, we canceled cable because whenever it was not cool to cancel cable, back when everyone had cable, we canceled cable because our health insurance went up $150 a month and we were paying $100 for cable. And so we canceled it. We asked if they would negotiate. They said, no, we're not negotiating. We're not lowering your cable bill. So we were like, okay, well, we're done. So sometimes you can, but you can usually find good deals if you're willing to shop around. We switch our car insurance usually at least once every 2 years because they slowly increase those prices. But that's exactly what we do. It's what I recommend to the women that I work with because it's an easy way to save money all year long.
That's great advice because many of us, I guess you get busy and you don't try to shop around for the car insurance.
Yeah.
And you kind of know that the premiums keep going up.
Yeah. And I read, I'm sure you've read this, Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. He says that he rebalances his portfolio every year on his wife's birthday. And I like that idea of having it at the same time every year. That's exactly what our family does. It's just every January. Every January, New Year, we look at our expenses and we figure out not our variable expenses, but those fixed expenses. Where is it that we need to cut back? Or we take a look at our subscriptions and we ask ourselves, are we really using this? Is this something that we really want to be paying for? And so we have this set month of the year that we've been doing it for, probably 10 years, that it's just become this habit that every January 1st, it's usually like between the 1st and the 4th. My husband's on the phone, he's searching around, he's calling all these people, and it's this small window of time, hours of work that helps us for the entire year and saves us hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's great timing. I like that.
It is. So I would say find a time.
Yeah, because every dollar you save, you know that's making your year better.
Exactly. Exactly. And then not even that, I think that's one thing. And it's easy for people like me to then be able to say, okay, now that we've freed up $200 a month because we changed up, these 4 or 5 things, how can I spend this $200 a month, right? And my mind starts thinking about what I can do with that money. And so what I've learned is that if you free up that money, take a percentage and invest it or save it or send it extra to debt take, 80 or 90% and then take 10% and allow yourself to enjoy that. Because I think that helps people like me. My husband, he could save the whole 100%, invest the whole 100%, but I want to keep just a little bit of it for fun. But that's two different personalities.
Allison, your journey started with this $800 a month goal for daycare. I know that you had a second child, so then it became like a $1,600 a month goal.
Yes.
And you were able to pay down 111, 108, and I forget how many cents. 29 cents.
Yeah.
Like, how much fat can you trim? Were you guys living in like a cardboard box? How did you do this?
This is a great question. So number one, we are teachers. We live in Texas. So our mortgage payments at the time, it was like $1,200 a month was our mortgage and our escrow and everything. So we were living in a house that was, well below our, what they recommend, like 25 to 30% take home pay. It was well below that. And we lived a very intentional life, meaning to me, and I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, it felt like this huge sacrifice, but we became very, I wouldn't even say strict. I would just say very intentional about what we were spending our money on and what we were willing to pay for. Because for me, it was, am I willing to prolong this journey we're on to do X, Y, and Z, or to buy X, Y, and Z? And a lot of times the answer was no, I'm not. I'm ready to be out of this debt. I'm ready to be done with this journey so that I can build wealth. So that was one thing is, we were living very simply. We still, I say we went on vacations, but we still traveled to see family, which felt like vacations because you're staying in different places. We did go on one kind of bigger vacation with family to Florida. So we were still living a life that we loved. And then one of the biggest things was right when I got pregnant with my second son, I remember being so fearful because we were able to send like $2,000 a month to debt. By this time, we're sending, $2,000 a month to debt and $800 in daycare payments. And I remember thinking, this is going to set us back so much, having this second child. And right 2 months, no, not even 2 months, 1 month before I gave birth to my second son, my husband moved school districts and he took a $10,000 raise. And that $10,000 raise or more covered exactly what our daycare payments were for my second son. So we could continue making this progress. And the funniest thing was I was eight and a half months pregnant. I'm sitting in this boardroom. The superintendent of the school district where he's leaving, where I was still teaching, is sitting next to me. And he turns to me in front of everyone and he says, "How can we get your husband to stay? He's so good. How can we get him to stay?" And I said, He's not going to stay. He said, "But what can we do? I'll do anything. How can we get him to stay?" And I said, "Give him a raise." And the superintendent looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I can't do that." And I said, "Well, his raise over there pays for this baby's childcare, so he's going." And, that allowed us to continue to make progress on our journey and not slow down.
That's really cool. And then this wasn't all about trimming fat. I mean, your husband took another job in another district and could make more. Mm-hmm. You guys had side hustles too.
Yes. Yeah. So my husband's a band director, and one of his requirements in the district where he used to work was that he got his bus driver's license. And so he was paid $50 every trip he took. And so he was going, Friday nights to the football games and sometimes on Saturdays at the competitions, at the high school band competitions. So he was earning money. I dabbled in photography and earned money that way. I sold lesson plans and things I made on Teachers Pay Teachers to earn money that way. We both taught summer school at different times. So we did find ways to bring in income that would help us. And anytime we brought in that income, we never spent it. It went straight to debt because we were living a life we were happy with on our regular income. So anything extra was bonus to our goal.
Did, like, I'm curious how your friends and colleagues reacted. Was it unusual for the band director to be driving the bus?
No, it wasn't unusual. I mean, lots of coaches drive buses. It's not unusual for that. I will say that, I don't know what people said about us behind, not in front of us, but I did have a teacher that came up to me at recess. I actually just posted about this on Instagram the other day. He came up to me at recess and I'm standing there and he said, "Oh, I hear you're trying to pay off your student loans." And I said, "Yeah, we are." And he was a teacher and his wife was a teacher. And he laughed and said, "Good luck. That's never going to happen." And I remember thinking, number one, who are you to tell me this? Like, I didn't ask for your opinion. And number two, I thought, watch me, because what we were doing, especially at the time, whenever there weren't all of these Instagram accounts, these debt-free Instagram accounts, and, it was basically like, I felt like it was Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman. Those were the people talking about it. It wasn't these everyday people talking about paying off debt. I think everyone thought we were going overboard or being silly. We had family that thought we were just being too silly, going overboard, taking it to the extreme. And we never, to me, I thought, you might be thinking that, but I don't feel that. And my opinion is what matters.
Do you feel like that was one example, the one person who came up to you? Do you feel like that's is that representative of an expectation that society has? Or is that just an excuse to say, look, we're two teachers, we're not like high salary income jobs, and therefore we just have to accept the debt that we have?
I mean, that's definitely the thought I had. I remember marrying my husband and thinking, I guess this is what it's going to be like. Two teachers, we're not going to ever make enough. We'll always be in debt. We won't ever have wealth. We won't be able to take any of these nice vacations. I remember thinking I had signed myself up for this life of just getting by. So I do think that that's what people believe until they start seeing other people do it. So what happened is people doubted us. Now, not my super close friends, but we had family that thought we were crazy, and they would make comments about, y'all need to live a little. And we're sitting here thinking, we are living. We're happy with our life with these two babies. Like, I don't want to take my baby to Six Flags, and so they were thinking we needed more experience and more memories when we were creating memories at home. But it wasn't until we became debt free and teachers started coming to me and they saw someone do it. And I feel like there's power in seeing someone like you achieve. And so all of these teachers, several teachers in my school would come to me in privacy and say, "We are so overwhelmed. Can you help us?" And so I started meeting with different teachers to sit down and look at their money and look at their debt and help them create a budget and create a debt payoff plan and check in with them. And for most of them, my form of payment was just feed me a nice dinner and I'll come over to your home and I'll do this. I'll help you with this because this is my passion. And I think that it wasn't until they saw someone like them do something that they felt like was impossible that they realized, hey, I could do this too.
That is powerful. That's what I'm talking about. You're walking the talk. And at what point do you make the decision to stop teaching and to launch a business based on this budgeting and teaching people? So
it kind of fell into it. Whenever we first started our debt payoff journey, I used to think, when I'm done with this, I will never budget again. I hate this. This is so restrictive, right? But I had these harmful habits for years that I hadn't broken up with. And I hated it. And by the time we were done, it took us 4.5 years, which, that's a high school education plus some, right? Like that's a long time. By that time, I had solidified helpful habits and it just became my way of life. And so we got through this process. I was visiting family And my cousin-in-law was there, and I was talking like, oh, did y'all hear that we paid off debt in August? Oh, we're so fun. And now we can use our money to save. And, we're going to set up Roth IRAs and not rely on our teacher pension and all these things. And she looked at me, my cousin-in-law looked at me and was like, enough. And I was taken aback. I said, excuse me? She said, we hear about this every single year. Every year, every holiday, you're talking about budgeting and paying off debt. We are not the people you need to be talking to. Enough. You need to take this to others. And I was like, how? And so she had built an online business that is extremely successful. She said, you need to build an online business. You need to teach people who need to hear your message. Stop coming to us and teaching us. Teach people who need to hear your message. And so 2 weeks later, I started Inspired Budget, and I had a goal to leave my teaching job within 5 years. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And if I'm not able to replace my income within 5 years, then I'll just drop it and move on. And I was able to replace my teaching income within 2 years. And so it allowed me to stop teaching and work from home and still teach in a way, right? I still get to teach women. And I'm able to take my talent, my skill set of teaching and my passion for helping women with their personal finances and combine them.
How do you monetize? Are there different revenue streams for your business?
Yeah, I do. I have different revenue streams. I have some digital products you can buy. I have a membership, a great membership where I take women down a step-by-step path. That way they can stay focused and go from feeling lost and confused about their money to confident, successful, and investing their money and all the in-between stages. So I do have a membership. I have, different advertisements, affiliates. So that's one of the biggest things is I think sometimes my family members, some of them are like, so you just post on Instagram and you make money from that? And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. So, but lots of different ways to make money.
But in 2 years, you were making more than your teaching salary.
Yes, for 2 years I was making more, but I consistently for 2 years only paid myself my teaching salary. So what I did was I even though my business was making more, I continued to pay myself what I made as a teacher.
And how many years has it been now?
Oh goodness. It's been 2 years since I left teaching. It's been 4 years since I started Inspired Budget, and it's been 2 years since I've left teaching.
Any regrets at all?
Oh my gosh, no. I guess maybe one of my biggest regrets was not starting my business sooner, not realizing that this was a thing. But then again, I think my life, maybe if I had started sooner, I wouldn't have been prepared or as dedicated. I don't know. I spent most of my teaching career always feeling like I'm not in the right place. I was very talented at what I was doing. I was very skilled at what I was doing, but I always, by every February, I was Googling, what can I do with a teaching degree? Because I knew I didn't want to go back to school, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. There was something missing. And realizing and creating Inspired Budget, it all led me to Inspired Budget. And I realize now it was what I was waiting for years. It was what I was Googling but couldn't find the answer to. So I don't have any regrets. I love it. The freedom that the business gives me allows me to pick up my kids from school and drop them off and be home when they're sick. And my husband and I used to play rock, paper, scissors whenever a kid was sick to see who had to stay home. So we don't have to do that anymore. But it also it fills my heart. I'm truly happy doing it. And I didn't always feel that way with teaching.
So you're debt-free, you're a business owner, you have more control of your schedule and your destiny. I think that there's upside for your earnings with your business. Where do you go from here? Do you and your husband still have weekly meetings to review your budget?
Yes, we do. We have weekly meetings. It's very exciting. I love them. We have weekly meetings every single Sunday. We talk about our budget. We talk about our meal plan, who's going to cook dinner, because I'm home. I mean, I'm the one home at dinner time. So most of the time I cook it, but I do assign him days because I'm not a chef. That's not my job. That's not my job in this house. So we talk about that. We talk about activities to just have everything be on the same schedule. So, I mean, from here, we are working on investing as much as we can right now. My husband will have a pension, and that will help us with retirement. So it's basically supplementing that pension and investing $1 million. That's our goal now.
And for any of our listeners or viewers who, at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about feeling ashamed about debt. Mm-hmm. Do they just follow your experience? They don't have to quit their job and start an Instagram channel, but can they model what you did by creating your budget, by cutting out cost, by doing side hustles to make more, pay down the debt? Because that's where the freedom lies.
Right.
Can they do that? Like, if they feel ashamed because of debt, do they just follow your path? Like, what's your advice to them, since this topic really resonated? What do you tell people who follow you on Instagram?
I tell people that, it comes down to the way you view yourself and you view money, and that we all have these money stories, and we have to rewrite the money stories, because our past with money does not define our future with money. And so I think that when someone's just starting out, they probably feel the way I did, and they feel very overwhelmed. There's a lot of information. There is a ton of information, and it can be so overwhelming that it just makes you want to quit, because you don't know where to start, right? You don't know exactly if it's this huge path to follow. Where's the starting point? And so what I try to do for women is I give them the starting point, and I say, don't worry about any of the other noise out there in the world that's going to distract you and make this take longer. Here's your starting point. Let's work through, literally step by step, dealing with, setting those goals, making a budget you can stick to, dealing with impulse shopping, dealing with impulse spending, the emotional side of it, learning how to take back control, getting your spouse on board, paying off debt, becoming debt-free, investing your money. I try to take them down this step-by-step path that if they ignore the noise outside, that they can follow this path, and it will literally take them from point A to point Z.
Well, thank you, Allison. I love that. It just seems like what you've accomplished, maybe you'll be having a course just about goal setting, because I think the goals that you're working on today probably did not seem possible from where you started.
Oh my gosh,
but
no.
It just evolved so much.
Yeah, no, whenever I started, I just thought, okay, we'll work until we're 70, and then we'll live on no money, and who knows if the teacher retirement system is going to hold up, with all these teachers retiring. It was very much just this, I always felt like, before we started, that I wasn't given the opportunity for more. But what I realized is the opportunity was there, but part of me, I was holding myself back. And so when I was able to break down those things that were holding me back, I realized that I could do all of this, as two teachers. Anyone could do it on two teachers' salaries, pay off their debt, build wealth, and find contentment, reach their goals. It can be done.
Allison, I'd like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I define success. Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think that I used to define success differently. I think now, to me, success is contentment. It's so easy whenever you're building a business to always see what the next person is doing or the next stage that you need to meet. And what I realize now is that's not success. That's success in one way, but am I content in my life? Do I have my four walls, my family? Do I have peace? Am I peaceful? Am I at peace with myself? Are my thoughts serving me? And if my thoughts can serve me well, then I can be successful, and that I am successful. If my thoughts, what enters my mind is serving me well.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal story and for helping so many women and for using social media in a positive way to battle like all the comparison and negative that, sometimes put people in a funk. Can you tell the inspired money makers out there where to follow you and where to find out more?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Inspired Budget. You can go to inspiredbudget.com. And then can I tell them about my free training?
Absolutely.
I have a free training all about how to pay off debt even if you don't make a fortune. And you can get there you can get access to it by going to inspiredbudget.com/free class. Just all one word, free class.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, Andy.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? Did you like Allison's enthusiasm, her story, and her tips? I liked her practice of reviewing recurring bills at the beginning of every year. Renegotiate your TV, phone, and internet. Get quotes for home and auto insurance. Every dollar that you save can be reallocated towards paying down debt, savings, and investing. If you had a different favorite inspired money moment, please let me know by posting a comment below. And please hit like right now if you enjoyed this interview. For watching until the end, I want to send you an Inspired Money sticker. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy, send me your name and address, and I will send one of these in the mail for you. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you so much for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.